All right, welcome back. Now we're going to continue this imposter syndrome piece, but we're going to add in a few questions for you guys. So when you're reflecting, you can hopefully tease out what exactly it is that's driving some of the doubt that you're having. One of the main things I want to point out with reflection and thinking about, like when you are feeling confident versus when you are having doubt, right? Sometimes we confuse discomfort, right? So like we confuse discomfort with not belonging. And I want that to stop. Discomfort is growth. So when you're in a classroom and you feel like, oh God, everyone here's so smart, I don't want to raise up my hand. I don't want to say anything out loud in class. I don't want to turn in this paper. I don't want to get the feedback. I'm uncomfortable. I feel really uncomfortable. You're uncomfortable because you're in a new space and you're testing your abilities. Discomfort from a growth perspective. When you get up to present the first time and you're sweating bullets, that's discomfort that's coming from growth. You're pushing yourself. You're asking more of yourself. Discomfort is not imposter syndrome. Discomfort is you doing something new that you're maybe not an expert at right away. And you're not going to be an expert at academia in 4 years. You'll know a lot about your field, right? But expertise comes with time. And so the discomfort that you're feeling might just be you're testing yourself, you're growing, you're building new skills. That's a normal feeling. Normal. And so I would ask you then to think about other times you've been uncomfortable. Like I mentioned the running. When I signed up for my first ultra, I was like, I had no idea what the course was. I did not want to look. I saw so many people that looked way more fit than I was, vomiting gummy bears on the trail. I, of course, was uncomfortable. I had doubt because I hadn't done this thing before, right? I'm uncomfortable because I don't know. That's way different than I'm uncomfortable because I don't belong. Two very different things. The other thing too that can really help when we're talking about like things to reflect on is areas of your life where you can challenge yourself that may not be in academia directly. We chatted a little bit earlier about the fact that like confidence outside of academia, you're still you, right? It's like you're one person. When you're building confidence in one area, you're building more confidence in general, even if the confidence is that you're willing to take the risk, that you believe in your ability to take the risk. I also think we really need to redefine this idea of failure, quote unquote. If you're a researcher, you're gonna fail. You will have failed experiments. It will happen. But instead of looking at the time that you spend working on something only to have it not turn out the way you think it's going to, reframing failure and instead thinking of it as a redirection can be really useful. So no, it's not that I suck and my experiment failed. It's more like, so we tested this thing and the answer was no. So now we're going to look at this other thing, right? So having more mental agility when it comes to quote unquote failure. And the same is true for success. What does it mean for you to be successful? Redefine it and don't attach it to a label or an outcome. It can't be, I will be successful when I get that PhD. Maybe you were successful in getting the PhD, right? Do you see what I'm saying? But that's not all that makes you a successful person. There are other things. So like examining purpose, right? I'll mention this to my students all the time, but if my purpose is to leave things better than I found them, that's success to me. It's broad, but that's what it means. And that in and of itself creates more mental resiliency so that when things don't go my way necessarily, if I know I've shown up and I've contributed and I'm working on improving things, that in and of itself is good enough. That's success. Curiosity versus judgment. I want you all to look at yourselves and ask good questions, asking like the whys, right? So like, why do I feel uncomfortable when I'm standing up in front of my peers and presenting my research? Why do I feel uncomfortable asking for help? Why do I feel ask the questions? Be curious. I'm not uncomfortable presenting. I am uncomfortable asking for help sometimes. Why is that? Trust. Okay, ding, ding. I don't know. Do you see what I'm saying? Figuring out the whys will really help sort of clarify whether what you're dealing with is like chronic imposter syndrome or you're just in an environment where imposter syndrome grows like mold. But that doesn't mean you have it. It just means you're experiencing doubt. In short, you feel like this if you're an academic because you're in an environment that encourages it. Doubt is normal. If you care about being successful, which chances are you do, otherwise you wouldn't be listening to me talk at you right now. If you care about being successful, you are going to question things. You're going to feel nerves. You're not gonna always feel like you're sure of yourself because of course you're not sure if you're growing and you're challenging, right? It's not possible to have both at the same time. The other thing I would ask y'all to do is to think about turning down the volume on the comparison, right? So I have plenty of students that are admitted into programs and they don't all have the exact same background. I have a student who's getting a PhD in computer science, and when she came, she needed to take a number of different classes to feel like she knew the same amount as some of the other people that were in that program. Does that mean she doesn't belong? No. They knew that. They admitted her knowing that that was going to have to happen. They were really interested in some of her research ideas. Do you see what I mean? So like comparison, I know everyone's like, comparison is the thief of joy. It's natural. You're going to do it. But here's the thing, right? When you look outside of yourself and you're comparing yourself to other people, you're trying to figure out, should I be here? Do I belong in this space? That's normal and that's natural, but that cannot be the only deciding factor. You know nothing about most of the people you're trying to compare yourself to. That's the reality. You don't. If you can say to me, oh, Leslie, I looked him up on LinkedIn. You don't know anything. You still don't know. You don't know about the history. You don't know about all the failures. You don't know what they've had to do to get to where they are. You may not even know how old they are, if they've had jobs in industry prior to going to grad school. So letting go of comparison and focusing on yourself and your own growth is really important. Understand also that there is no formal validation that is going to make you feel successful. Not long term anyway. In the moment, maybe there are a few minutes where you're like, oh yeah, man, like I got this, like I got my PhD now, this is really wonderful. But if your whole entire journey through academia was so that someone said, congratulations, doctor, to you, and that in and of itself was going to be, that's the end point, right? That's the result, that's the well, you're not staying in academia if that's the case. It's a journey. I hate that word, by the way, it's overused, but we're gonna use it anyway. Oh God, it's a journey. It is. You do not need a formal title to be amazing, smart, brilliant, and have something valuable to contribute. If you are invested, you're gonna question things. You're gonna feel doubt. You will be uncomfortable. Creating internal success metrics is key. So I suppose like one of the tips that I would provide right now is that purpose thing that I just mentioned to you, figuring out what purpose is really important. Now, if you think that you're going to do that in some activity I'm going to blah, blah, blah about in 3 minutes, you're not. It takes a long time. But playing around with purpose, you're like, why am I here? What makes me feel like I belong? Like, what does success mean? And then using the purpose to determine the metric, not some external validation from somebody else. All right, here we go. Proof of success. How do you have the proof? So reflecting on internal identity in this situation would be very helpful to you. So if we take a few minutes in this activity and we write down, what are the things that I admire about myself? And start from there to think about purpose I promise you that you'll start to feel more confident pretty quickly. So let me give you an example of what I mean, all right? So if I think about, what are the things that I know about myself? What are my strengths? What are my good qualities? I'm tenacious. I'm not a quitter. I tend to be super physically tough. Emotionally needs a little work, but I'm physically tough. Like, I have things that I really do love about myself. If I make you a promise, I'm always going to keep it. I'm really loyal. I like being able to provide people with safety, security, and stability, because those are things I value. So getting to know those things about yourself, like, what am I bringing to the table, right? Outside of, I have this paper published, or I'm this type of researcher, I was accepted, in this journal. But what are the things you internally really do admire about yourself? And remembering those, writing them down, and then leveraging them whenever you do start to feel self-doubt creeping in. So the practice in this case, right? So when we talk about reflection and curiosity, reflection with curiosity is me meeting myself where I am right now, acknowledging all of my strengths, and also at the same time acknowledging, like, okay, so like maybe there are other things I still want to achieve, and there might be areas in my life where I am having a hard time, right? So we all go through those. But the internal qualities, if you can identify the things that you actually really do love about yourself, and I know that sounds so woo, it's not meant to, but those are the things, like those qualities, the internal pieces, those are the ones that are sort of the life raft so that you don't slip into imposter syndrome. Because you belong to yourself. You belong, oh God, this is really woo, but you do belong, right? You belong. And no one outside of you gets to determine whether or not you belong in the seat that you're in. Like, you decide that. They admitted you, and now you get to decide if you belong. But having a good idea about, the internal strength pieces, that's really going to help.